Hello, and let the podcast begin. My name is Peter Morris, and I have the joy of being joined today on the TFOR podcast by Euan, Julia, and Mathew. Guys, it's an honor to be here with you. It's an honor to speak to you. The first podcast, we discussed some of the forum's reaction to the new series, the announcement that season 11 was going to be coming back. And today, I think we're going to discuss some of the new changes to the show and to the forum that will inevitably happen as a result of this new series. So I'm very excited. We've got some very, very good guests for you lined up, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start with the revelation, really, the biggest change that has been announced publicly to the world so far. The fact that we're getting a new Raven in the form of Aisha Toussaint, a veteran of River City who's worked alongside James before as part of that show. She's 21 years old. She's a Scot, and she was also a fan of the show back when it first aired. Panel, thoughts?
Okay, well.
That's a good thought, Mathew.
That's a good thought, Mathew. Okay, let's start. Let's start with Mathew. Okay, your thoughts on the announcement and the decision and the new casting choice.
Okay, so new casting choice. Definitely interesting to stray away from the host that's done it so successfully for essentially 13 seasons. I know there's 10 main plus 3 spin-offs, but that's 13 seasons. And he's been Raven for 260 episodes. It's definitely a interesting...
Do you have all these figures memorized? Just to point out, there's a level of...
always been 20 episodes a season.
There's a level of geekery, which is... We're talking about a children's game show on the internet. And then there's a level of geekery where you can put the exact number of episodes of the show that you're talking about. Okay, no, I see your point. So the crux of what I think you're getting at is it feels a bit odd to recast, considering we have someone who is so firmly established as Raven. Am I right?
Then again, sort of in the later series 9 and 10, I was starting to feel like he was becoming less and less of a mental figure and more of an announcer just in the Raven voice.
He's just kind of like there rather than necessarily being the kind of like force of nature that he was from season 1 through season 7, season 8, the spin-off seasons. I thought he was also great in. There was a bit of a decline in enthusiasm, but I feel like that may have been the fault of the show and the show's editing as well. I don't feel like he got as much of a chance to be himself to a certain extent. There's an interesting point there. I think I'm going to come back to the point I was going to make about why, personally, I actually quite like the casting decision and why I think it might have actually been a good choice to recast James. But I'll hold that off until I've heard everybody's thoughts, I think. Can we go to Julia now?
Yep. Hello. Well, again, I think it's very strange, having been with Raven from so long before and started everything at the forum around Raven and James. It's going to be weird. But I think new blood is not always a bad thing. I think Aisha, she's a Scot. She's obviously a good actress because she's still on River City, and she knows James already. So there's lots of potential there for her to be really good in the role. I think it's nice from a diversity point of view as well.
Yeah.
It's nice to see some representation. But representation and who you are aside, I think if they do have to recast James, then she's a good choice. But I'll still miss James.
I think
because I've had the privilege of meeting James many times, and not only is he a good actor of Raven, he's a lovely person as well.
I think the whole
genuinely lovely person.
Sentiment of missing James is going to be one that's absolutely universal to the forum and to the shows, like old school fans. And the point
I don't think it's going to matter to the new kids.
It's not going to matter to the new kids, but for us personally, it will be kind of like, I feel like it's going to be emotional. I don't know to what capacity James will be sticking around for the whole show, for season 12 and beyond even. But for us, it's going to be...
It might even just be one episode. It might even just be one episode where he hands over the mantle, which would make me cry. I'm not going to lie. It would make me cry. That would break my heart a little bit.
I want to have a podcast which is just all of us just blubbing, bursting into tears. It's just like a whole bunch of Raven nerds all together reacting to the first episode where like he hands over the scarf and goes, "This is yours now, young warrior," and just watch everybody crying. Just everybody just full on crying, bursting into tears, and that's the whole 90-minute podcast.
Old school fans react. That'll be great.
It'll be like some reverse, you know, those videos where fans of Game of Thrones react to the Red Wedding or something. It's just like they're all like shocked, covering their eyes and like tears streaming out of their face. It's going to be our version of that. I feel like.
Yeah, pretty
Try
much.
not to cry
Pretty
challenge,
much.
extreme cringe edition. Okay, there's a few things that you. There's a few things you touched on there. James, I feel like, embodies the role, and he made it his own, and he knows how much it means to people, and he's become very like nice and very personable to the fans throughout that process. So it's going to be difficult to see him go. But the point I want to bring up about the representation issue, when I think about the shows which were originally on CBC back when I was like 6, whenever Raven was first on, I'm trying to think of another TV show which had a Scottish presenter. I'm trying to think of just anything. The best, like any CBC show which was fronted by a Scot.
Was Sally Gray not Scottish?
Was what?
Sally Gray from 50/50, was she not Scottish?
Ooh. I may have to Wikipedia that.
There's
That
a
was
very
a
good
long
chance. There's a
time
very
ago.
good chance. There's a very good chance. Because 50/50 was produced by the same production team as Old Raven. Certainly the online video editor and a few others are the same. So there's a very good chance there are Scottish people in there as well.
I am now going to have to Wikipedia this. On a side note, who remembers 50/50? I do.
Yay! I remember
50/50
wanting my school to
children's
go on it and then knowing that my school would be awful.
Hint.
What was that, Euan?
For the BBC. This is another show you might want to bring back.
Sally Gray, according to Wikipedia, MBE, is a British television presenter, which means part of me wonders if that's like. I'll have to have a look.
On the little
she
grid
was-
down the side on Wikipedia articles.
She was born in Scotland,
Well, she's got a
Yeah.
Scottish accent anywhere. I remember her to have one.
so that's my point gone down the drain, which is that Raven kind of filled in the gap of there not being a Scottish TV presenter. Obviously, that's not true. There clearly was.
I think Raven was one of the only Scottish or not English actors. Because it's like, yeah, they had a Scottish presenter on 50/50, but that was just a normal game show, whereas James Mackenzie is actually playing an acting part, a character. So there is that. It is kind of a first.
That's true. And I think the point, if we're bringing up representation in the broadest possible sense, when I think about what's currently on CBBC, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on this. I'm 21 years old and don't have a TV license. But I can't think of anybody that immediately springs to mind who's currently on the CBBC roster who is Scottish, or any shows which prominently feature a woman of colour as like part of their main cast. I think Wolfblood has a fairly diverse cast. I know that a lot of the interstitial presenters are kind of that's Julie's partner coming home.
Yeah,
I think
partner's coming home.
There's a few like interstitial
One
presenters who are women or people of color. I know that occasionally Horrible Histories has like these reserve actors that they
Just
try and
muting
bring
myself
out
1 sec.
for the sake of it would be very awkward trying to get the Horrible Histories cast to do Harriet Tubman without some cross-dressing and some very, very questionable makeup jobs. So I feel like Aisha being brought in fills that gap quite nicely in terms of the issue of representation. It's keeping everything like fairly even and making sure that everybody from every part of the country, from every background, kind of has a bit of a fair stroke in terms of I don't know how big the diversity issue is. It's a bit of a tricky one. You could argue it doesn't really matter that much. You could argue it's hugely important. I'm going to be kind of a fence sitter because if you argue, then we get more views, basically.
Well,
I'm kidding.
In terms of representation of women of colour, the best example of it probably making a difference is one I know is one of my favourite shows, Star Trek. So before the Star Trek TV series, black women normally only ever appeared on screen as maids or servants. You know, especially in America.
I think I know the story you're talking about. Yeah.
With the advent of Star Trek, a black woman played a lead role. It was a role requiring a lot of intelligence and importance. It was a groundbreaker for black women on television, basically, or women of colour. And not only did Nichelle Nichols, the actress, do fantastically, actually getting that far, she also inspired Whoopi Goldberg and many others. And the fact that there was a black woman in this lead role on screen really inspired many people, including Whoopi Goldberg. And that's a good example of representation working.
Wasn't there and there goes my microphone and the audience's eardrums. Very sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Wasn't the quote from her, "There's a black lady on TV and she isn't playing a maid"? I feel like I originally was kind of in the camp that, you know, representation, it's all this political correctness gone mad and all this stuff. But then I realized I don't see that many bald people on TV. And so whatever I do is just like, there's one. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's what it feels like. And if I can feel like left out, if I can feel disenfranchised for something like that, then imagine what this must be like to just like 6 or 7-year-old girl suddenly seeing like this awesome butt-kicking magical warrior type girl with a big staff who just like zaps demons and fights Navar. That to me, that justifies it in and of itself. I don't think we've got to Euan's thoughts yet. Euan, Aisha Toussaint, thoughts?
Well, sorry. Well, I think it's pretty cool, actually. I guess I've kind of come to terms with it now. But at the same time, I feel I do feel James is Raven. Same as everyone else is saying. What was it? Someone was saying yesterday, can't remember who it was, that this next generation will only know Aisha as Raven and not James. But I don't think that's true, because anybody could go to YouTube or Google Images nowadays and they'll see James.
I think we're going to talk a bit about the new fans and the new fans' relation to the old season and kind of the old guard of people on this forum in a little bit. But yeah, I get your kind of, is it nice seeing another Scot back on TV? Are you glad they didn't cast an English person who's trying to do a Scottish affectation?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry,
you didn't even have to think about that. Yeah, there was no having around. It was just like, yes, they managed to. They finally got another Scot on. I'm so sorry for like.
Stop imitating the Scots accent. That's exactly what you said not to do.
I'm a hypocrite. I'm a terrible warning. I'm not a good example. Okay.
Sorry. Well, yeah, I was going to say that. Even though like we're comparing things to like with regards to this issue to past and present CBBC, I never back in the day when I used to watch CBBC regularly, nothing was anywhere close to being as compelling as Raven for me. Nothing.
This is one of the things I think I brought up on, I was going to say yesterday, we were recording podcast episode 1 and episode 2 on consecutive days. So I think that was what Euan was referring to earlier for the audience at home who might be watching this way in the future. But yeah, one of the things I think I said on that podcast was CBC is kind of like a very young channel in the grand scheme of things. I know there's kind of been children's broadcasting it's been around for a while, but I feel like it wasn't given its own channel until I can't remember what it was. I think it was late 90s, early noughties. It finally got given its own channel, which was separate from
I think it was early 2002, about a few months.
Yeah, it
before
was early
Raven.
2000s.
Yeah, and that's not a very long time to be a channel. That's not a very long time to find your footing as a network. That's not a very long time to build up those kind of compelling relations with the production companies and directors and writers and other people who are enthusiastic and very careful about children's programming. But I feel like the quality has been improving recently. We've seen stuff like Horrible Histories, I brought it up, winning BAFTAs. Things like Wolf Blood and the Spartacle Mystery being very compelling and pushing the boundaries and changing what can actually be done in terms of children's television, which I think is all very exciting. And then seeing Raven kind of brought back to that televisual landscape, seeing the show that we all found so compelling back in the day kind of brought back and updated and geared towards the sensibilities of this older, wiser children's television channel. I feel like that's going to be very interesting. We've seen it might not be the best comparison point in the world, but think about what's happened with American television and networks like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. A lot of the content that they've been gearing from the early noughties, looking at what they're showing today, things like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, those cartoons are geared towards children, obviously, because that's their main selling point. But at the same time, they have the plot lines and themes and issues which connect very strongly with adults and that you can genuinely watch as an adult show. You can go from watching Breaking Bad to then suddenly thinking, no, I want to catch up on Steven Universe. And I'm wondering if it's going to be the same sort of deal here. I'm wondering if, knowing that Raven is going to come pre-packaged with a whole legion of adult fans, if they're going to try and appeal to the sensibilities of the fans who have grown up, moved on with their lives, and then are going to be revisiting the series nostalgically, as well as the kids who are coming into it, looking at this bold new series. And I feel like that casting decision, casting a fan, Aisha Toussaint was a fan of the series, and she's my age as well. She has all the same memories. She grew up with this series like me and like a lot of people on this forum.
Pretty sure she's living the dream.
She is absolutely living the dream. Who doesn't want to be Raven? I want to be
exactly.
Raven.
I hope they give a nod to the old shows and old fans there. That'd be nice.
It would be
just a nod of some kind.
Well, I don't know about that, but I definitely don't think that the BBC should just pretend that old fans aren't going to continue to watch, just because obviously the new generation or the target sort of age range for the whole channel should be the primary selling point.
Where did we find out about the breaking news that Raven was returning from? Was it from the CBBC website itself? Because it wasn't personally
I found it out from Ross.
Yeah,
I think we all found out from Ross.
He's good at that.
On
I think he was.
Ross for
permission page. Hang on, let me go and look this up.
I think BBC and Digital Spy have done articles about it.
Excuse me?
Yes, I think we all talked over each other a bit there. I'll come back to what Mathew said about it. For those who weren't aware, Ross, of people outside the forum or people who are just joining the forum, Ross is one of the moderators on the forum, and he's very active in updating the Facebook group. I saw he'd posted in the Facebook page, and the post was, Raven is returning. And I think he linked an article. Den of Geek reported on it. The BBC News reported on it. Somebody mentioned somewhere else. Radio Times reported on it. These are not outlets geared to try and sell to CBBC fans. These are outlets that adults and teenagers read. Mathew, you kind of said your point. Where did you hear about this from?
Forums, but browsing YouTube one day. Oh, look, Billy's uploaded a video. I wonder what it is. Raven's coming back.
Billy Bo 10,000 is a YouTuber who does the Minecraft Raven series, and we're hoping to get him on a podcast fairly soon.
I love that video.
I still haven't watched it.
I love that video.
I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to watch it.
It's so funny.
It's gonna be the one where he just breaks down and cries. It's just gonna be. It's gonna be another one. Let's go back. The reason I'm saying all this is because the hype was not spread by CBBC. The hype was spread by all these channels who remember Raven and know that there are people out there who remember Raven. That marketing, that early initial marketing, is targeting the adult fans. Might not seem like it may be targeting them directly, but it is targeting the people who remember Raven, and, you know, it's digital news media outlets. It's not stuff that's read exclusively by kids or exclusively by CBBC fans. It's read by a whole bunch of different people. And all of that was part of the marketing of it. And, you know, it worked. It's got the forum active. It's got people talking about it. It's got people who I've seen were not even part of the forum liking the digital spy page where it said Raven's coming back. The point I wanted to bring up about Aisha being I don't want to say replacement because that doesn't feel genuine. Aisha coming into the show. She's 21. I think that was about the same age that James was when he started. Does anybody know how old James Mackenzie is?
Well,
I do.
He was actually 19 when he started, so if we add 17 years onto that, he would be around 36 now.
I think 35, 36, I'm going to guess.
Wikipedia tells me he's 38 years old. Now, that's not old, obviously. Of course it's not. But at the same time, in terms of a CBBC presenter, if this is akin to what the last run of Raven did, where it lasted for a decade's worth of programming with several spin-offs, quite a busy schedule, doing the same thing every single year. If he's on for another 10 years, then he's going to be 48 by the time it wraps up. At that point, it's kind of inevitable that the physicality that the role of Raven requires and the idea of him being like immortal may not actually fit in. It really sucks to say because I want to see James come back as much as everybody and just continue being Raven forever. But we have to kind of accept and acknowledge that the youth and energy that James brought to the early roles were a big part of what made the early seasons of Raven work. His more grizzled, rough, experienced manner was what made a lot of the spin-off seasons work. And we don't want to have him come back if he is going to lose heart like he did maybe some of the later seasons or saw his role reduced to the announcer. I'm not saying he's too old to play Raven. Of course he isn't. He is and always will be Raven to this particular generation. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that a lot of the people who were on CBBC and who are geared to specifically connect with younger children, James is quite a bit out of that age range, and it kind of sucks for me to say. But yeah, do you guys agree, or do you think that's an unfair point and James can very easily continue playing Raven until he's like well into his twilight years, 65, still kicking butt?
I think he could be like wise old Raven, but it wouldn't be the same Raven we knew.
I think he can.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's part of the idea of James mentoring Aisha. He's experienced, he's got the demeanor down, he's developed as a character over the course of these seasons. He's seen instances in which his own desire to do good has resulted in recklessness, has resulted in endangering the warriors unintentionally. He's got the kind of experience that the age and the role has required of him. Aisha's new, she's vibrant, she's a young gun, she's coming in and maybe she does not yet fully know how to be Raven. She's coming in as a fan almost. She's coming in as somebody who wants to live under Raven's legacy. And I don't know if Raven's like the type.
Yeah, I was going to say in terms of the show storyline, it would work very well if she was an apprentice.
Yeah.
One of the
especially
things,
in terms of magical things.
But yeah, I was talking, but anyway, moving on. So yeah, definitely, it would definitely work if she was an apprentice. But before we go on, can we have a moment's silence for 39 warriors that did not make it back from the spin-offs?
No laughing, moment of silence. I was wondering who was going to break first. It's Julia. Julia broke first. I was so glad. I was so nearly on the verge of breaking down. Oh,
why,
God.
I could see you about to. I could see you about to break, and it made me break.
We need to do one of those. The CBC YouTube channel put out something quite recently, which was try not to sing along to the CBC theme tunes. I so hope they do one of those try not to laugh challenges, because I want to take that as a podcast and I want to see everybody resoundingly fail, just because I will not be able to like hold it in. I giggle way too easily. Raven. We were discussing Raven at some point.
Funny that.
The idea of, I think it was Mathew's point, the idea of Aisha kind of being an apprentice. And then I think Julia also said, I'm getting to you. Don't give me that face. Julia also said the idea of, Julia had the idea of it being an apprentice and then kind of moving on. I think Mathew, I'm not sure, somebody suggested that maybe she was a previous Ultimate Warrior from an unseen season of Raven, or she was...
Yeah, I thought
she was
Yeah.
a young warrior, a young trainee of Raven's, and Raven has now been forced to choose somebody to be his successor for whatever reason the plot will dictate.
Yeah, or maybe it's... I don't think this will happen. Sorry, Euan. I don't think this will happen, but I think it might be the same person because Raven's a shapeshifter. So...
This is true. Maybe, did you say... are you saying he's going to regenerate? He's going to be Doctor Who and regenerate?
But he can change into multiple human forms.
So he merely adopts a new human form?
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to see. I'll have to see. I don't think it's likely because we know that James... Although, I don't know. It doesn't seem implausible, but it just kind of seems like... I don't know. Oh, that's interesting because that's the one thing I think I've seen so many different ideas and wild theories and wild mass guessing entertained. That's the one thing I haven't seen, that James and Aisha are the same person. It's just a reincarnation or a regeneration or a shape-shifting form. It's obvious. It's right in front of our faces. If he can turn into a bird, are we really going to like question the logic when he turns into a black lady? No, of course not.
No. And if it is a regeneration, then all the Doctor Who references made in previous seasons make sense because he's a time.
There were Doctor Who. There were Doctor Who references in
Season
Raven.
4, Ultimate Warrior. Season 4, the Ultimate Warrior speech. It is the end, but the moment has been prepared for. It's regeneration. And
oh my
at the end,
God,
when
you're
he
a nerd.
gives him the staff, it
That's
is
a level of geek.
go forward with your beliefs and prove to me that I'm not mistaken in mine. First Doctor, when his granddaughter left the TARDIS, and I have just gone on for so long about Doctor Who that I've probably confused about 90% of our Raven fans.
So you're saying that there's been references in the old seasons of Raven towards classic Doctor Who?
Yes.
Okay, number one, that is a level of nerdery, which I think
Congratulations, you win Nerd of the Month.
everybody will aspire to. I'm trying to keep it on track. You understand? I'm trying to keep this podcast on track, but I am just flabbergasted by the sheer display of dorkery that's just been presented towards me. I don't know what to do with that other than just go, wait, what? Really? And if that's the case that you've saying we've been playing these since season 4, referencing classic Doctor Who, so that Raven was going to get cancelled, uncancelled again, and then it was going to be a regeneration, and it would be the subtlest nod in the world, which literally only you have gotten, proving that Raven is a Time Lord that regenerates. If this is the case, on any future podcast, if Raven regenerates into Aisha, I will eat whatever you want me to, Mathew. I will get anything you want me to eat, be it my hat, be it another human being, and I will consume them for 60 minutes on this podcast. and I understand the danger of me saying that. I can just see it now.
For future reference, I want him to eat ghost pepper.
Oh, okay. I can just imagine when we get to the episode 1 recap podcast, just Mathew there with the biggest grin on his face, and just we play that clip, and it segues into me just going, "Well, I did say I was going to do this." Okay.
I'm pretty sure we all owe him a tenner. We all owe him a tenner if Raven regenerates.
Everybody owes him a tenner if Raven regenerates. We owe him another tenner, I think, if there is an explicit Doctor Who reference at some point within this new season 11. See, this is the kind of speculation and broad, uneducated guessing that this podcast is all about.
Yeah.
Maybe James Mackenzie is leaving Raven to go on to become the 13th Doctor, or whichever number they're on now.
Don't get my hopes up, Julia.
If that's the case, then well, I think everyone is going to be gobsmacked, and probably
lots of screaming will occur.
Yeah,
it will be the only thing that convinces me to start watching Doctor Who again.
Well, the fact that stuff
that's
and
true.
Mathew's leaving also kind of a big. Yeah, probably.
Euan, while we're here, do you have any baseless conspiracy theories about season 11?
No, honestly. I did say to you personally that I kind of wanted to withdraw from it a bit and just see what comes when it comes.
You did say. I'm sorry for dragging you back into this. In my defense, Euan,
it's all right. It's really entertaining. It's really funny, honestly.
In my defense, Euan, I had no idea that Mathew was at that elevated level of geek. I'm still reeling. I don't know how we're going to get.
It's really funny.
Get it back on track. I feel like we must, because we have got the more pressing issue of, yes, we know that season 11 is coming back. We know that season 12 is going to be a thing. The new fans are probably going to come seeking out the forum, are probably going to come seeking out the fandom, seeking out Raven, and they're eventually going to discover us. We've been rumbled, lads. What do we do to welcome in the new fans? What do we do to welcome in these new fans? How do we introduce them to classic Raven? And what's the best thing that we can do to kind of help them on their warrior's quest, shall we say? Let's throw it open again. Let's go to Euan this time, if you have any thoughts.
Well, I think if we're specifically talking about people that have joined the forum that are younger and are new fans, then I think we should just allow them to just patrol the forum freely and discover things at their own pace. Give them breathing space. Just let them let them get used to everything themselves with our guidance and everything as they ask questions and all that, and browse about the place.
That's how it worked for me. For those who are not forum members, I joined, I think it was 2012. I joined a couple of years after season 10 of Raven had finished. One of the things that we do on the forum are these things called computer modeled member series, where we use, I think, random number generators, dice rolls, stuff like Dungeons and Dragons to role play series of Raven. I didn't quite understand how the forum worked initially. So there was a series which had been completed, which said, would you like to sign up for a team now? Go for it. And I said, oh, yes, I would. And I didn't realize that was submitted a few years prior to this thing. So I ended up saying, yes, I want to join this. And I started seeing the forum updating. And it's just, oh, look at all this stuff. It's moving so fast. And they said, oh, disappointed I'm not a member, but understandable. I want to see where this goes. And then somebody commented, Pete, this was 3 years old. You just don't understand how this works. And I was just like, yes, you're right. I don't.
Everybody new to forums does that. I've replied to old threads on my own forum, so, you know.
You're a founder. How did you get confused by the forum?
Yeah. Quite easily. Just because I'm the founder doesn't mean I have all the brain cells.
Well, since you are the founder, I think it's probably the fairest question to throw open to you. This is going to be one of the largest influx of fans we've had in a very considerable time. So, Julia, how are we going to deal with it?
Number one, be welcoming and kind and helpful and nice humans. Don't be crazy and scare them off. Okay? I know we have fun being a bit nuts, but don't scare all the littlies off. Think that you are going to be talking to kids a lot younger than most of us.
Yeah.
So take into account how you speak to them and how you approach them. Just be helpful and don't overwhelm them and bombard them with information, because that's probably one of the fastest ways to put people off things.
I think one of the other points.
So much information at once. So yeah, just be careful how you speak to them, but be nice.
On that vein, the other thing I'd say is don't talk down to them. Don't insult their intelligence. Bear in mind that they are going to be a lot younger than you, a lot more naive. We don't want to scare them off. Might be a bit difficult for me. I'm very bald. It's very scary. But at the same time, I feel like, yes, completely. Try not to scare them off. Try not to bombard them with information and show them, we do this. You must sign up for this. Come be on our podcast, which is exactly what I've been like on the forum for the past couple of days while I try to get everybody signed up and on board.
The only issue. Oh, yeah, I was going to say the only issue with younger kids is that you won't be able to podcast them without parental permission anyway.
That is a fair point.
Child protection. I've done a lot of training in it, so yeah. But I'm sure we can set something up.
Yeah, I'm sure everything will be okay so long as the people that are involved as warriors don't go around posting spoilers.
Yeah, quite.
I mean,
they do get briefed properly.
Never work with animals or small children. Raven does both.
Or large ones. Don't work with large ones.
Or large children?
Yeah, never.
Or children of any size.
You moderate a forum full of grown men discussing a decade-old children's game show. You're dealing with large children quite a lot, I think, Julia.
Yep.
Mathew, your thoughts? New forum members, and what are we going to do with them?
Make sure not to... basically what Julia said. So, if you're wondering what I'm thinking, go back a few minutes in this podcast, listen to Julia's stuff, then jump back. Okay, good.
We'll include a little annotation with timestamps. We won't do that. That's effort on my part. It's not going to happen. One of the things I think we touched on earlier, these fans are going to be coming in seeing what I don't really want to term as New Raven, but what I think will be termed as New Raven. How do we introduce them to the idea that there are older seasons out there, there are other things for them to explore, other things they can get interested in, and then by extension, all the fan works and all the discussions that we've had about these previous seasons without, again, overwhelming them with too much information. I don't really know who to start with on that topic. If anybody has any points, then...
just that from explore the forum. I mean, that's probably the best thing that they can do is just explore the new updated what's there.
Yeah, true. There's forums for every series and there are even classic boards and everything, so...
Yeah. I feel like...
And the spin-offs.
Working through those seasons, working through those forum boards, it might be a bit of a long and arduous process if you're trying to be a completionist, but dip in and out. See what you like, see what you don't like. If there's particular discussions that you want to follow them. If there's particular things that you maybe don't quite appeal to your sensibilities, like maybe the series hadn't quite found its footing yet with any sort of format within season one, so maybe some people want to gloss over that, or equally, it maybe lost its way in some of the later seasons, so people might want to skip past those. But anyway, if you ask any forum member what their favourite season is, they'll all say something completely different. And at the same time, that's the good thing about Raven. We have varied opinions on it. We disagree, but we get along and we communicate. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what the new fans are. I'd quite like to interview a new fan once he or she joins the forum, just to kind of see what his or her take versus the take of someone who is an experienced forum member is going to be like. Whether there's things in the old series that the older fan misses, and there's things in the new series that the new fan maybe picked up on, which the older fans didn't. There's certain nuances, there's certain ideas which we haven't seen and we haven't thought of because we're no longer in the age range for it, and it's no longer new and fresh to us, where it's going to be new and fresh and exciting to all these new fans.
Yeah, I'm sure. I trust the moderators to just keep on top of everything and like maybe make some new sticky threads if there's important information to get out to everybody quite urgently. Another point I was going to bring up earlier was about the rule that people have to use proper English in their post. Would you say it's fair that you think younger people particularly are probably more likely to use text talk, for example, than previous?
Not massively, because all the phones these days have QWERTY keyboards, so it doesn't save much time to type properly.
Oh, I suppose.
I tend to find a lot of kids are actually not massively abbreviate like they used to. Like when I was a kid, all you had was your number keypad on your phone, and I used to text speak awfully when I was little. And now I'm older, I don't, because I can type just as fast on my smartphone.
Yeah, I think
it's not actually that much of a problem.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who don't, like, I know we're saying don't insult people's intelligence, but I think it's important that people at least try to use proper English where possible, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's text speak can be really quite hard for dyslexics to read as well. So there's also the accessibility to take into account.
Yeah. So if you're watching this and you're new to the forum, please use proper English.
Nobody proofread my posts if you're banning people based on not using proper English, because, oh boy.
If you're making some mistakes or you're dyslexic, you're not perfect. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, if you think
you don't full on use leet speak or text speak, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people who come to the forum aren't automatically familiar with the rules, and that's expected. It's like any new environment, you need to have a bit of a, not necessarily training people period, but some time to settle down, some time to join, look around, be curious, be innovative, and see what you can do and you can do to contribute. Don't feel like if you're watching this and just like, but I can't type really well, then we're in any way holding anything against you. Like, we're going to be using our own discretion here as well. It's not like we're going to be blanket banning people and we're going to start coming down with the full force of the moderators, praise the Ross, to make everybody behave and stay in line. It is still a forum. It is still supposed to be fun. So that's the one thing I would say. If we are going to bring up that point about they must use proper English, they must obey all the rules, we're going to say all this stuff. We're all going to say it. Take it with a pinch of salt. Know that we're not monsters. Know that we're not going to try and shut anybody down if we can at all help it. Know that despite our physical outward appearances, shiny forehead,
hey, I'm fluffy. I'm fluffy. Nice.
We are all generally quite nice people. So behave yourselves, have fun. Don't worry too much about the rules, but just understand they're there for the sake of everybody's enjoyment. Other than that,
the rules are there because we're not. I was going to interrupt and say we're not strict and we don't like making lots of rules and banning people, but it's a kids' show, and to that extent, we have a duty of care to make it a safe place for young people. So that means there are some absolutely non-bendable rules.
Yeah,
and
that works.
You need to take those into account. We're all lovely people. If you have problems, if you have issues, you can come to us. We're always there to chat. But we will do what we need to do for the safeguarding of everybody on that forum.
That's a point that's so good and so nuanced. Euan just disappeared slightly.
Yeah, sorry, there was sunlight coming through my window.
I was taken by the sun demon.
If you watch these podcasts in order, the next one's probably going to have this large white patch in the background fixed, and it'll just be hopefully. Keyword there being hopefully. I may actually be in a different location by the time the next one goes out, but we shall see. The last point I think we wanted to bring up today was about Raven and Raven's approach to storytelling. We've heard rumors, we've read articles, we've seen things which indicate this season of Raven is going to have a slightly bigger focus on the plot than the other. I'm not sure how it's going to relate to the spin-off series, but certainly more plot in it than the other series of just traditional Raven. I want to know what the panel think the approach is, how is it going to change, and whether or not that's a good thing.
Honestly, if they just go down the Mission 2110 route, that should just be fine.
Mission 2110, for the new fans who aren't aware, was a series which kind of followed Raven after it was cancelled, and it was basically Raven but with a sci-fi theme, and that also did have a plot that was incorporated within the narrative.
And I'd say it was much better incorporated than it was in Raven. Please don't smite me, Julia, please.
No, I agree with you. I always felt like any kind of storyline in Raven was like sort of side angled in there with a crowbar, whereas the storyline of why Caleb was there in Mission 2110 and what he was doing, the storyline was the show. It was a part of the show, and it wasn't awkwardly angled in there at all. It just fitted. I agree with you on that one.
Knowing that Raven actually has a fairly well established, well, not established in a concrete sense, but it has been set up to have a backstory, to have these characters, to have a good versus evil fight with Raven and Navar, to have spin-offs where there is a plot overarching the whole season. I'm hoping what that means is the approach will be a little more like Mission 2110, something I hadn't even thought about in relation to Raven when I went into this podcast. And I'm hoping that they will give a bit of an overarching sensibility. I feel like the story of Aisha's struggle, or New Raven's struggle to live up to Old Raven, assuming it's not a regeneration story. If it is, then my taste buds are going to be ruined live on this podcast.
For your enjoyment.
Assuming it's a mentoring story, assuming it's a story in which Aisha learns and grows how to be Raven and how to take care of these kids, and maybe even James learns how to accept moving on from the role. I feel like a story like that will be really well incorporated with the action, because they can literally tell each other about the Warriors' progress and how it makes them feel. We have the mechanics of the show suddenly becoming metaphor, rather than just being side-angled and maybe like crowbarred in, as Julia pointed out. Julia, if you have any more thoughts, I think now might be the time to come back to you.
Yeah, there was, I can't remember whether it was series 7 or 8 now or something like that, but there was a bit where the opening titles were literally a vague story about how Raven was created. I think it was something to do with an eclipse. I'm just wondering if they're going to expand on that.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, it'll be nice for Raven to have somebody else. I always felt sorry for him. He must have been very lonely. The only bird person around.
Indeed. So the full cycle, and I know stuff by memory, is that one day there was a great eclipse, pure forged in pure gold from the deepest lot. And from that, magic was created, and Raven was born.
Yeah, that's it. Caw.
I think that was season 7's intro that all took place in. I don't have anything else to contribute to that. I couldn't remember all the details, but Matthew apparently can, because Matthew is the arch geek of this forum.
I'm changing your forum title.
Do it. I don't care.
Title is arch geek of the forum.
Do it.
Okay, Euan, your thoughts about New Raven versus Old Raven and storytelling?
Okay, well, I just wanted to make a point first about what you were saying about us all having different opinions on which series are the best and which aren't. I genuinely think that if my first experience of watching Raven was a spin-off, I wouldn't be nearly as big a fan as I am today, honestly. I just think the original works for me in the way the sort of challenges are done and everything. Like, you've got some team challenges, but you're still all working against each other at the same time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So there is an element where you do have to work together, and the cohesiveness and what I liked about the spin-offs, and why I think I will maybe defend them a little, even though that's quite... In some cases, people just did not like the spin-offs as much as they did the original format of Raven. what worked about the spin-offs is you can see the team dynamic and see the cohesiveness in the team being built up. But one of the good things about the original was we not only got that original team building dynamic, even if it was for only brief glimpses, we also got them to compete against each other. And I'm wondering how the series will balance the two now that they have a few fewer contestants.
Okay.
But yeah, one of the things I'm going to return to you.
Sorry. Is it okay if I continue now? Yeah.
Yeah, what I was going to say is the writing in a lot of the spin-offs was a bit dodgy at times as well. I'll throw that point over back to you now. Continue.
Well, yeah, what I was going to say is not only was it the fact that the challenges and the spin-offs were all shown in sort of 3 lumps, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And there was all these sort of cut scenes in between where we saw like Raven talking to Saturani and all the rest of it in the Secret Temple, for example. I think I would rather that stuff was just omitted from proper Raven and in the spin-offs instead, as them being 2 sort of separate entities. And I think the best way in which you can add more backstory to what we already have as the original Raven, we can have more things like that Series 7 intro, for example. While I'm not too fond of the good v evil thing myself, I do think it helps to sort of establish an atmosphere, like this fantasy darkness atmosphere. But yeah, at the same time, they could add more sort of like Navar's Eye intro scenes into it, and they could have more sort of like you know when Raven like leads the warriors to the dwarf mine and tells them about how a mine was abandoned by dwarves and all these fantasy elements come into the intros to the challenges. I just think there's loads of ways in which you can add backstory appropriately that doesn't detract from Raven being a challenge show at its core.
Idea I've just had. I've never seen anything about Raven explicitly revealed through a challenge. We see various aspects and elements of this broader fantasy universe. I think you mentioned Dwarf Mine, which is one of those because it has some sort of backstory. We see a challenge such as Navar's Eye, where it's a big, intimidating, glowing Eye of Sauron type thing, and then that leads into a challenge. I've never seen a challenge which is quite incorporated plot or backstory into the story. Rather, it feels like all the story, all the plots, all the world building we get is focused outside of the challenges. Potential, this is just like my bad elevator pitch idea for a challenge, but suddenly they go into kind of like this dark underground dungeon library type thing. They have giant pages of a book, and it's just this 10-part story of just something that happened to Raven in the past. And the challenge is you have a time limit. There's encroaching demons and stuff you have to like get rid of through, I don't know, various means, baff them with a staff, fire an arrow at them, slingshot them. And then the one warrior has to piece together this story. And from this, we get backstory while still watching a challenge. The mechanics are the metaphor. The gameplay is integrated within the story. Something like that I've never personally seen before. I'm not saying they should do that, but I'm just wondering if are going to have this greater focus on plot, and they may potentially have a greater number of challenges to kind of cope with the fewer number of warriors, where they're going to do something like that, where we get this backstory, we get this plot, we get told about these warriors and the history of Raven and the land that Raven lives in through the challenges themselves rather than just as a side piece. I feel like that would be a really nuanced and really interesting piece of storytelling if they could do something.
That's what I think too. I think that was what I was saying. It's a point they can definitely improve upon by sort of having the backstory in the challenge introductions and even during the challenges to some degree. And then you could add more story without distracting from Raven as a challenge show with all the sort of values and all the excitement and everything about Raven being a challenge show that makes it so enjoyable to watch and how you can actually connect with the people participating on it. That was pretty much exactly what made Raven so good for me.
One of the mutual things I've heard from people who have all sorts of different opinions on Raven on the forum, when it was mentioned that they were going to be adding more plot, a lot of the sentiment was, oh God, I hope that this doesn't come at the detriment to the challenges. I hope that they're not going to spend more time on the plot or more time focusing on the plots unnecessarily than they do on the actual challenges and on the kids competing.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. I think that they can make more spin-offs and save that stuff for the spin-offs. So while I'm not exactly a big fan of the spin-offs, as I said, I can at least judge them for what they are and see the effort that's put into them and sort of judge them in a different light while still having Raven to enjoy, as it is.
Mathew, Julia, would you agree that perhaps they should save some of the plots for the spin-offs?
Possibly, but I think the storyline through challenges idea is nice because it would mesh and integrate a lot better. It'd feel less unnaturally forced.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what I would echo as well. Having a new spin-off season would be great, but if they are going for this focus on the plot, I feel like they should just commit to it as part of the regular series, and then that opens up an even greater possibility for what they can do with the spin-offs. It shouldn't just be Raven is just Raven, and it must be kept completely pure, uncorrupted by any storytelling, any world building, and then we resolve
we already
spin-offs.
We already know it's not going to be the same Raven as we knew. That's just a game show.
Sorry, you cut out a bit there.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
We
I'm
already
thinking
know that. Yeah, I was
Julia.
going to say we already know that it's not going to be the same Raven as we knew. That was just the game show that was set in. It was focused entirely on a game show with hardly any storyline. We know it's not going to be like that in the first place. So there's no saying how well the story will work or not.
Yeah, Euan.
I was going to say, but while you were saying it was just the game show, it had so much more to it than just the game show. It had all these values explored on courage, on companionship, on you name it. I could go on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It had so much more to it, which is what made it great. But at the same time, we didn't have a storyline such as, Raven's birth or Raven's childhood or something. Sure, we had lots of added values and emphasis on importance.
We had some basic storytelling in the spin-offs, but there is a backstory which has not been adequately explored. Exactly. And I feel like they are going to have to explore it, even if it's just in the sense of we're adding more stuff towards it. They are going to have to explore that as we explain the relationship between Aisha and James, whatever that may be. I'd be interested to see what they do with it. One of the trickiest aspects is trying to make all that story and all that ideas they want to pack in, make that not feel just bolted on, make that not feel forced, make that not feel just like it's just been sandwiched in there so we don't have to watch the kids. That's one of the huge difficulties of creating the show. You have to balance the plot and the narrative to an extent, and I feel like they are going to do that maybe just to pander directly towards us, the old fans, the old guard. But you also have to make sure that the pace of the show doesn't drop and it's kept exciting. When people talk about the flaws of these spin-off seasons, that's probably what I'm thinking about. The repetitive nature of a lot of the dialogue, the fact that it was taking us away from the challenges. It gave some nice cliffhanger moments, but at the same time, it felt annoying, unnecessary, tacked on to some people. Not me personally. I quite enjoyed seeing some of the dynamics play out. And it was nice to see James flex his acting chops. Aisha is an actor. She's not been brought in as a host. She's been brought in as an actor to play Raven. She's going to be acting during this. So I'll have to see what they want to do with it. I'm going to reserve judgment a bit till the show, but I'm quite excited.
Well, we have to, because it's all just random speculation at this point, and we can't see how well something that's completely new is going to work.
That's the purpose of this podcast.
Sorry, well, there was all random speculation, and I had to put on my
speculation leads to carry on.
And I had to put on my random speculation hat, which you can't see, unfortunately.
But random
Have you actually
speculation leads to Pete eating chili. That's good.
Mathew, are you actually currently wearing a hat?
No.
Oh,
I was so convinced you were. I was genuinely dreading that you were going to say yes, at which point you're just... Ladies and
literally
gentlemen,
wearing
I
a
mean, I
baseball
can
cap with
very
random
get happen
speculation
whenever
across it.
if you want.
the biggest dork on the forum, ladies and gentlemen. And that's a difficult feat to achieve. I feel like we're rounding things up there. Of all the things we've discussed today, welcoming in the new fans, welcoming Aisha, welcoming in the new plot, I want you to just share your final thoughts, the new season, and the new adventure that we as a forum are going to take together with this new season. Let's start with... Who have we not started with yet?
Julia.
Let's start with Julia this time.
Again, I'm really excited. I'm less horribly apprehensive than I was. I've kind of accepted that I've accepted that it's going to go in a new direction, and now that acceptance has come, I can move on and get excited about it. And I also can't wait to see Pete's taste buds get ruined. I really want that to happen later in the season.
Oh God, Mathew.
I'm excited. I'm apparently the biggest daughter in the forum. Maybe the journey will be that discovering that I'm not the biggest dog on the planet this season.
We can only hope. Euan.
So yeah, I guess the same. Like my first post that I made on the forum. Sorry to talk about the forum after the announcement was made was just all old stuff. I just went entirely with my heart, and then a couple of days later, when more was announced and I read back on it, it was just totally laughable. But so yeah, that's kind of it. You just got to accept it. It's not going to be exactly the same. So I've done that now, and we've kind of gone over some things we want to stay. Some new things that would be good, and apart from that, it's just all speculation. So I guess at this point, I'll just need to be quiet, keep anticipating it, and see what happens.
Yeah, I'll give my closing thoughts, and then I think I'll be ready to call it a show right now.
I'm just going to say one more thing, which probably isn't necessary, but I would like Navar to be like he is in series 2 and 3 again, as in that he actually does something, to be a proper threat rather than just stands there as a
Very
single
true.
evil.
Very true.
There's a point. Yeah, I want to see if Navar's back and there's 2 Ravens, then he'll be amping it up, possibly.
What if there's 2 Navars?
That would be so good. Can that be another...
Navar needs to be in the gameplay like he is in The Last Stand in Series 2 and 3. Even if I don't like that challenge all that much compared to the obstacle course version, at least Navar actually does something.
Yeah. I was going to just suggest something to Billy. I might as well throw it out there right now. That Last Stand in Minecraft Raven should be if Navar hits you, you have a small time penalty. Because that way he'd be an actual threat in the challenge and not just standing there.
At least it's accurate to the show when he does Minecraft Raven.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting and very nuanced point. Can we say that if there are 2 Navars in this upcoming series, that's another ghost pepperable moment?
That'd be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that if in the unlikely event that there is both an instance in this new series where Aisha is the regeneration of James and there are 2 Navars, I will be eating 2 ghost peppers.
Well, I suggested it, so we should both each eat a ghost pepper at the same time.
If anybody from the BBC is watching and they want to troll this forum very hard, you now know how to do it. Okay, let me give my closing thoughts. We're often told that change is good, but I feel like there needs to be a bit more nuance from that. We've kind of been kept in our old ways as a forum because we haven't had anything new to reflect on. Now we've been given something new and vibrant from the series creators. It gives us so much more than we could do with the old stuff. We've been generating our own new content for years. We've been putting out fan fiction, Minecraft Raven, spin-off seasons, wild speculation about what was coming back, a podcast back when Raven wasn't even announced back on the air. But it's here now. And so there's only a few things we can do. We can accept that the changes are going to be happening, or we cannot. If we don't, we're not going to be able to move on, and we're going to be stuck in our own ways. The changes that occurred in this next series might not always be good, might not always be agreeable, might not always be exactly what we wanted the old guard. But it's not up to us to say that the series is good or bad. It's going to be up to us to make it a good experience for the new fans. That's the legacy of Raven. We're going to enjoy what they put out. We're going to criticize. We're going to compliment. We're going to welcome in the new fans that it's going to bring in either way. And that will be the greatest challenge of our generation. I'd like to thank our absolutely wonderful panel, Julia, Mathew, and Euan. Give yourselves a mild round of applause. Mild round of applause. Mild round
And there was much rejoicing.
One of my hands is holding the iPad. I can't.
Give yourself a one-handed clapping mild round of applause. Okay.
And Mindly Python.
I can't remember all my catchphrases.
And there was much rejoicing. Clip here if you so choose.
Join the Raven Forum.
Join the Raven Forum. Until next time, young warriors. I'll see you then. Thank you very much. Bye.